5 of my closest high school friends and I took a long weekend and went camping and bass fishing at Atchafalaya Basin about 26.1 miles from Lafayette, Louisiana. The Atchafalaya Basin is the nation's largest river swamp, containing almost 1 million acres of America's most significant bottomland hardwoods, swamps, bayous, and backwater lakes. We had already eaten dinner and decided to do some night fishing for some giant trophy bass. We went out in 3 small fishing boats. First boat was Bob and Donnie, second boat was Jim and Charlie, and the third boat was Dean and I. Bob and Donnie were out near the other side of the basin, Jim and Charlie were somewhere in the middle, and Dean and I were just a few feet from the fishing dock, on the northern side of the basin, and it was around 9:30 p.m. About 45 minutes went by and we could hear the other 2 boats were catching fish, but Dean and I so far nothing. We were about to change our location, when I spotted a huge circular spacecraft heading our way. I had called both boats using my cell phone using two-way conversation. Told them to turn their lanterns off and look for the UFO slowly coming our way over the basin. It made no sound at all, only giving off a small glow of light, plus all wildlife around us was quiet too. It stopped at the basin and was just floating in the starlight sky. Soon it started moving very slow and seemed to stop over Bob and Donnie's boat. Just then, there was a bright flash of light that hit their boat. It lasted about a half a second. I couldn't see or hear anything at that moment. It started moving slowly toward Jim and Charlie's boat in the middle of the basin. When it stopped right over their boat, they panicked and tried to start their motor in order to get out of there. Again, Dean and I saw another flash of light. After the flash of light we could not see and hear anything at all at first. After recovering our senses, it was eerily quiet afterwards and we could see both boats were missing from the small glow of light given off by the UFO. I told Dean not to move and breathe, thinking maybe they had not seen us yet. As the UFO slowly moved northwest up the basin, soon going out of sight behind some thick forest trees from Dean and I. Thinking we just managed to give the alien spacecraft the slip, it started getting dark and the starlight night sky was disappearing slowly, turning into darkness. Just as I realized it was over Dean and I remember a bright flash of light and didn't remember anything until I woke up in our 8-man tent that had 6 guys spread all over the tent. We seemed to all woke up about the same time trying to figure out what had happened to all of us. The one thing we did agree on was we all lost about 6 hours of our life. Not knowing what had happened during those lost 6 hours was very strange. It was about 4:30 a.m. in the early morning. Outside our boats were stacked on top and inside of each other, with our fishing gear under the boats, like someone intended it to be that way. We all packed up our belongings and went back home in Lafayette. There was not one of us that wanted to discuss further about what had happened to us a few hours ago. It was like it wasn't important anymore. I remember going home and telling my mother nothing about the UFO, but did tell her Dean and I didn't catch any fish last night and that we just decided to come home. I remember my mother saying on a Saturday, "All of you came home. Giving up 2 whole days of fishing and camping, well, that is a new one." I just went to my room and laid down on my bed and slept through the night and into the early morning hours of Sunday. I got up and sat on the end of my bed for a while watching sci-fi movies. I used to hate sci-fi movies, wonder what I have missed in the past years not watching. Went to work the next day, as if nothing had happened that weekend. In fact, I don't think I even remembered thinking about it again. Within a month or two, all of my closest friends and I started distancing ourselves from each other. It didn't even bother me or my friends that we were not close anymore. As 1 year passed us by, we all started living our lives differently. Some went to college, some got married and started a family, like I did, and some just lived their life as if that day was their last. Who the hell knows why, and at that point no one cared. I am now 65 years old, and while reading something on alien abduction, It sparked my memory and I remembered our alien abduction that 40 plus years ago. I thought long and hard about that night, wishing I could remember what happened during that 6 hours of lost time. I also started asking myself, why did all of my high school friends completely lose contact with each other? It was almost like we were all programmed that night to forget the abduction and anything attached to it. We were always very close in high school, friends forever kind of thing, but something stopped us from feeling that way. The 6 of us not talking anymore would mean we would certainly forget the whole fishing and camping trip that took place that night. Not to mention forgetting it for more than 40 years. I made the first leap and located all 5 of my friends on Facebook and asked them, for old time's sake, let's get together at my place for a barbecue, on a long weekend. All 5 of them were still in the general area of Lafayette, and get to know each other again, something I believe was taken from us years ago. About 2 hours into the barbecue, I brought up what happened that night. Bobby, Donnie, Charlie, and Jim look at me as if they didn't recall what I was talking about, but Dean spoke out, hell, we are talking about the alien abduction by the UFO hovering over us that night on the basin and the 6 hours of lost time we all had. Bobby refused to believe that it had ever happened. Donnie, Charlie, and Jim said they remember something very strange happening that night, and Dean and I seemed to be the only one that completely remembered it happening. We all talked about it for the remainder of the night, everyone having a different opinion on what happened. But it was the first time we all spoke about it after 40 plus years. All of us had no idea why we stopped being friends, but we all agreed to stay in touch more often in the future, making up for lost time.